So, Sneha, thank you very much for joining us, founder of Early Steps Academy. I would love to hear a little bit more about you if you could tell us about yourself.
Hey Alex, thanks for having me. So my name is Sneha. I'm the founder and CEO of Early Steps Academy, a global learning program, an after-school program for school children. I am from India. I graduated from IIT Kharagpur in India and did my MBA from Harvard, which is where we conceptualize the idea of early steps. And we have students in over 100 countries in the program.
And going back, could you tell me about school, college? Tell me a little bit more about your early life.
Mhm. So I grew up in a small town in India, Eastern India. It's called Jamshedpur, which is where the famous Tata steel industries were set up, and the primary occupation of people in the city is working in the steel factories. So naturally, a lot of the kids are very inspired by science, technology, because their parents might be foremen in the factory or engineers there, where you are constantly listening about machines and the marvels of how what science can do. So I think I was one of those kids. Eventually, ended up going to the IITs, which is the premium engineering institutes in India. I was always a good student, but looking back, it always feels like school was more because it was the right thing to do. There was a lot of the learning inside the school building was more around facts, around knowledge, around when the World War happened or when somebody went to the moon. But there was a lot outside school that my parents in early years encouraged in terms of like participating in debates, elocutions, competitions, which I have much fonder memories of. And that obviously also helped shape my personality, the way I could interact with people, the confidence I had in terms of navigating in the real world, which eventually showed up in undergraduate in terms of getting opportunities, be it for internships, jobs. And so that's like generally a small town life in India, being like a more academic kid with a lot of things happening outside school.
Did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Did you always have a business idea in mind or that path in
No,
mind?
not at all, not at all. So after my engineering and at IIT, I worked in Teach for India, which is I believe in UK. It's called Teach First in UK. Then you have Teach for America, so it's under the same umbrella of Teach for All. Then I worked in an oil and gas company, Schlumberger, for 8 years, working in deep sea on ships, US offshore, Gulf of Mexico, deep waters. Then I started the exploration business in Africa, East Africa, and Mozambique and Kenya on ships. And I absolutely loved it. There was a lot of travel. There was very exciting work. You could handle like at a very young age of like 24, 25, you could do multi-million dollar P&Ls you were handling. I then worked in London for 2 years in a global strategy role. Then worked in US for a couple of years. So across different parts, like from India, US, Africa, Europe, I was working in oil and gas, and I loved the thrill of working in a high risk, male-dominated industry, and was fairly doing very well. So I thought I'll always be in a big company, rise up to become the CEO. That was the early years of my career. The ambition was. Then I happened to go for my MBA at HBS, and I think something changed at Harvard where the method of learning and everything was very different. And like I was telling you, growing up, school always felt like something which was more regimental. And there was very little room for doing something else where you truly enjoyed learning. And that is when it clicked that this is about time that maybe this whole thing that I have where learning has to be fun, and especially today, yeah, like in the 21st century, even you and I, we are constantly upskilling, learning new things, doing different things. It is just unfair to children just doing those 5 subjects in school with marginal changes. And that's when the idea clicked for early steps. But since I was a big company person, I ended up joining Bain in the US after MBA. And somewhere while I was working with Bain, I started working on this idea as well and decided eventually this is closer to my heart, and I want to put my heart and soul fully into it, into building. So I quit Bain, and then it's been more than 3 years now that we are building early steps, and hopefully towards where it becomes a household name like Netflix or Google one day.
And you said you started this well. Did you start this on the job while you were at Bain and work on it as a side project?
Yes, yes. So the conceptualization happened when I was at Harvard. because a lot of the methods we are very inspired by my own experiences at Harvard, that how learning can be fun. So it was a project there. Then I continued working on it while I joined Bain after that. And for a while, I was working on both. Like I was doing consulting and working on the idea in the evenings and nights before I full-fledged quit one and then did this full time.
And what was your catalyst to quit and go all in?
Um, I could see the scale of impact was much larger than the path to, like, while it's very lucrative financially, of course, and to be a consultant, but the ceiling was to become a partner, yeah, or a senior partner. Here, it felt like the ceiling is becoming a household name, and even if on the journey somewhere this doesn't work, but still on the way we would have impacted tens of thousands of children, and in as a result a lot of the future generations. So it just felt much more impactful, and it was about time to do something bigger than what solved for myself. So that was the reason. Yeah, there wasn't much thought actually. That day I decided between then to actually putting in the resignation wasn't too long.
Yeah, I guess it's a win-win because if you fail, if you did have failed, then you would have impacted a lot of people. So it's yeah, I guess
Yes.
that makes it an easier decision. And obviously, I imagine it was very difficult starting out. Like, how did you go about all this? Like, tell me a little bit more.
Um, So started very small. Started with a couple of students, just understanding what was in my head was actually making sense for a child. So just for context, what Early Steps Academy is, it's basically an after-school learning program for school children in ages 8 to 18 to teach them or expose them to modern essential subjects, yeah, from entrepreneurship, climate, space technology, cryptocurrency, a range of STEM innovations, be it whatever is happening in bioengineering and different kinds of technological fields, with a focus on thinking and articulation. Like, how do you think in a structured way, and how do you articulate your ideas clearly? So that is the program. So going about it, there were like three parts to it. First was, of course, understanding what curriculum would work. Like when I'm talking about these 1,000+ subjects, what is essential for a child at a particular age? So what was to be solved? So that involved a lot of talking to a lot of people, a lot of school districts in the US, to people who work with different curriculums around the world. What is already existing in school and what is that is missing, which was huge. So what was the first thing? The second was how this needs to be delivered. Yeah? Like one is just building content around all these subjects that are essential, but for an 8-year-old, I mean, to create that kind of interest, curiosity, the delivery is also very crucial. You can't just put like a case study or whatever, a book on entrepreneurship and expect an 8 or a 10-year-old to be interested. So the how was to be solved, and a lot of the how was based on how learning was fun for me at Harvard. And a lot of the principles, we use the case study method for children. The innovation we bring in is to bring that powerful method to young school children. So that how was a big piece. And I think we've done very well with the how, because children absolutely love the learning, in terms of engagement, in terms of our attention, in terms of children wanting to continue the program beyond like a long 1-year course. The how was an important piece, and we've solved it well. And the last was who. Yeah, like once we have the curriculum, we know how we want to deliver. Who are our students? Where would we find them? Now, obviously, like looking like at 3 years down the line, it's some of the answers are easier. But back then, just one person finding the right set of students to even run the curriculum through for the first. So we started with friends and family, smaller groups, apartment complex groups, hobby groups, finding kids who would be our first set of students. And a lot of our first set of students now have graduated from high school. Yeah, they are in top universities around the world. So it's very nice to see like what we started 3 years back. Now some of these kids have done very well.
And what are your plans for the future? What are your aims for the business?
Hopefully, like the primary North Star is that we continue to provide a fun learning experience, yeah, for the children. There are two things that we solve for, that children, that the learning they have is relevant. Whatever they learn at an early steps classroom should not be something that remains within the bounds of the classroom or the books. They should be able to apply it in the real world. so that every piece of content curriculum we design has that in mind. So I hope we continue to deliver relevant learning for children. And the second is that the learning has to be engaging and fun. So hopefully, as we get more and more students, as we create, like, enter new countries, new geographies, we continue to deliver learning that is relevant and learning that is fun. For there are 3 billion school going children, so hopefully to be able to reach every child in some shape or form through this learning.
And obviously, EdTech and this sort of industry, learning, applied learning is quite saturated and it's a difficult market to crack. How do you plan on expanding and growing and keeping it up?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not too sure that I would call it a saturated market, because it is in different formats, but there is a dearth of, like, good learning, 21st century relevant learning programs. I even, like, when we speak to a lot of parents, the reason that they're struggling is that, yes, there are courses, even in schools for that matter, there is a little bit of upgrade of the curriculum, but it's not there. If you look at the adult learning space, right, how it has evolved, the number of programs that run in terms of us want, like, if we want to upskill today, if you Google that I want to do a course on, let's say, Bitcoin, you'll get like umpteen opportunities. There'll be so many programs. But if you want to do the same thing for a child today who is 10 or 15-year-old, there aren't as many options for something to be delivered in a child friendly manner. So I don't think the market is saturated, and I truly feel that the market needs more players so that everybody together can actually make a revolution where children are exposed to things that are not archaic, but actually will make a difference in their own professional journeys going forward as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the point. I think in some ways it is saturated, but in others it's not, because like even looking at most schools and the way we learn, it is very archaic. But then also on the contrary to that, it's like this. I guess it's quite difficult to crack because you're targeting students and parents, and especially in the UK, I would say a lot of these places where that need the education and they're sort of learning most are probably the least able to pay. So is that something you have to really take into mind when you consider, building a business, expanding it, etc.?
That is true. But also, even in the best schools, the curriculums have not updated as it should be. So getting to a place where children are not even getting like primary education properly is not like some. The market size is huge in terms of who needs this. Like everybody, even if you're sending your child to a private school in the US, it's better than other public schools. It's probably better than other schools. It might be better or worse, but it's not there. So even for them, it is an important learning opportunity for the kids who, like, especially parents, if you're sending your child to a good school, you are aspiring your child to do something, relevant in the world today. And if the school is not able to provide, somebody has to provide that. So that part is what we are solving for. Of course, like children who are less fortunate, there is a lot more to be solved. And I hope that we and others in the ecosystem are able to solve for them. Like even basic mathematics, if they're 10-year-old, a lot of these kids are not even at the space where they are able to solve level, age 5 mathematics, for example. So that gap, of course, needs to be solved, maybe by us, maybe by someone else. But that's different from what we are trying to solve for, yeah, above what the schools are providing.
And in terms of funding, did you go down the bootstrapping route or did you go down the funding? And if you didn't get funding, do you intend to get funding or?
So we are venture funded. But not like crazy amounts of capital fuel where we are burning like crazy. So we took a small seed round back in end of 2021 to just get started, and since then, obviously, the business has good traction. So we've been self-sustained since then.
And in terms of learning yourself, how do you like to learn? Do you like to use apps, read books? Like, what's your favorite method of learning?
By doing, yeah. I'm not the person who, if has to put together an IKEA table, would read the manual. I would probably try to fix it myself, and then on the way, if I'm stuck, maybe look directly into page 5 and see, okay, where am I stuck? So I think that principally aligns with the way I've designed the curriculum for children or in the course as well. That it's better to use your brain first than trying to find the solutions first.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the problem with education overall is that you're taught the method before you ever actually try it. Whereas it would be better if we were taught just given problems, you try to solve them and then
Right, right, right,
learn the
right. And even with
methods.
like, while it's great to have uh, things like ChatGPT in terms of helping increase efficiency, I think somewhere it also means that people need to focus a lot more on making sure children, and especially the next generation, continue to use their brains. Maybe not in the same format that we needed to use, but something else, right? You can't have the most precious asset go to waste if you are just like relying on ChatGPT for every question, every answer, every essay. So maybe there'll be more innovative ways where children are taught how to think and they continue to implement that in different formats.
I often see a lot of people echoing this sentiment
Mm.
about needing more applied learning, all this sort of thing. Like, what do you think? Why do you think there isn't more players in the market? Why do you think this change isn't happening fast enough? Because it seems like this has been a problem for a long time. Obviously, you're helping solve it, and there's many people who are, but why do you think it's not? Like, what's standing in the way
Absolutely.
of it being solved?
It's just harder to create content for children. It's and it's content that is engaging for children. Yeah, like of course you can create content, but children are not. Adults have self motivation, yeah, because you need a job, so you are maybe looking to change your industry from entertainment to finance. So you know that I have to work towards finance, so I have to do certain number of courses, I need to learn how to do a modeling and all of those things. But children don't have that. Children will do it only when it is fun for them, it's engaging for them. So I think to build that kind of engaging content, which also is regimental, which has enough discipline, which has enough learning outcomes for the child's time to not go wasted, it's not an easy task to take it up. And even like for the private sector, not just for the public sector, where the schools obviously have a lot of governance to change curriculum. So if you see broadly, the schools have similar content. What we learned is what our children are learning today. There's small changes because there's a lot of overhead where they have to go through certain levels in terms of approvals and other things to revise curriculum completely. But even in the private sector, you will see a lot of companies find it easier to bring more solutions in the same space, be it another math class, be it another music in a different way. So because it's just simpler, you can imagine better, you can just deliver results better, you can make the parents understand the product better. When it is a new thing, it is very hard for companies, for change makers to even make the parent understand that why this is important for your child and what kind of results are we measuring. So it's just overall a harder feat. Maybe like 10 years down the line it will become mainstream, but right now it's just more convenient. If I were to do another math class, yes, this is like everybody needs math, yeah, so it's easier to explain as well.
It's interesting because now, obviously, with the advent of tools and we've got AI, etc., it's almost seems it's like it's becoming a lot easier to create more personalized learning, create more engaging content, and do all these things fast and at scale like never before. Like I've seen so many advances in the last year or two, and people creating like really
Yes.
effective, engaging apps within hours or even weeks, like very short periods of time. And
Mhm.
do you think this is going to have a big impact?
Yes, definitely, definitely. It aids the process. It is faster to do research in terms of like even when you're building content, there's a lot of research in terms of what goes in it. Yeah, like even a small piece like a one pager for a child, that research process used to take much longer, and now it's faster. But still, there is a human element, and that depends on the experience of the person who's building it. And that human part of it, I personally feel it's very important for a child's engagement. Uh, the because you have to make it fun for the child, which is very very important to create genuine interest in learning. Yeah, it's not about my program or your program, whether the child stays in the program or not. If I'm able to generate interest, like enough interest in the child to just enjoy learning, I don't need to be with the child forever. Yeah, the child will always be a lifelong learner. So that part I think needs experience and human touch, where you are able to, yeah, create fast the mechanical part of it, the factual part of it, the research part of it, but to add that element where it makes it engaging is where humans are still needed and experience is still needed.
And do you think there's ever a trade-off between engagement and quality, or do you think it's very possible to maintain both at the same time?
I think it is possible, but I understand where you're coming from on that question, because a lot of the engagement for different learning providers it's equal to gamifying learning, which I fundamentally do not believe in, but that's a personal choice. I don't think that you need to make everything as a game to make it fun. Learning by itself can also be made fun, and which is what we aim to do, which is what we do at early steps also. There is absolutely no games involved. There's no gamification, be it the assignments, be it the live learning. Because gaming is almost tricking, yeah. Like the point is, you're trying to make the child a lifelong learner. You will not always get a game to learn. You will not always have a carrot at the end of the exercise for you to actually learn something. But if you can really make the child curious, that okay, if something comes up, a word comes up on a billboard, the child is curious that I want to know what it is. There's no prize at the end, I just want to know what it is. If you can create that, that in my mind is engagement. That in my mind is creating a lifelong impact, rather than trying to engage because of the frills and you have colors on the screen, you have games on the screen. I think it is a little gimmicky, but yes, maybe it makes sense for certain things that are essential, and that's the only way, probably.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that gamifying can definitely work, but it can probably be better from a business perspective. And it's sort of short term. You've really got to equip people with the desire and the passion and the curiosity
Mm.
to want to know things. And moving on to more the entrepreneurship side of things, like how would you say building a business has changed you as a person?
Definitely humbling. And I think a lot of what you hear is the success, yeah, like be it even at our scale, yeah, on a daily basis, the kind of struggles you have, you would not go out and write a post about it. You will only talk about the good parts of it. It's like I said, like at a very, very young age, I started working with large P&Ls, like multi-million dollar P&Ls. I worked in high risk environments where a mistake can cost a life. But I still think that I have never done something as hard as building a company. You plan something the night before, you wake up and everything is very, very different. And you have to be okay. Yeah, you need a lot of resilience. You have to talk to yourself in your head that it's okay. This is one part of it, and you have to move on. But the and that obviously has taught me a lot of resilience, not just in professional space, but in personal, just to change the narrative in your head why this is happening. And looking back, everything actually turns out to be very good. Like even things that seem bad in the short term, when you look back, it feels like, oh wow, good that that happened. So in the hindsight, everything becomes like everything is connected, as Steve Jobs said, the dots connect. So changing that narrative has also helped me a lot in my, like, generally as a person, to be calm. I'm anyway not super stressed. Like as a personality, I'm not like always stressed, which helps in building as well. And also like just to accept both. Like if you get something, something a day is very, very good, to just move on from that success and not just spend too long celebrating. On the other hand, if there's a day that's super bad, to know that there'll be tomorrow and that will be different. So just to have a balance of emotions where you're not super happy or you're not super sad, and keeping that pace every day definitely changes you. And especially if you're doing it for 3 4 years or 10 years, like it completely changes who you are.
Yeah, I've actually heard similar to that. Like people who've worked in high risk industries or very difficult roles, like military or like oil and gas, and these really are, and people still say that entrepreneurship's something different, as if like it's a different kind of sort of stress or whatever you'd like to word you, difficulty maybe. Um, how does it compare, like oil and gas, like you said, a mistake can cost you a life? How does that compare to working in entrepreneurship, like the difficulties, the stress, etc.?
Yeah, so there's some things, right? Like when you're working for a company, no matter where you're working, yeah, you are obviously you're working, so you have a team dynamics and everything, but you're not directly responsible for changing their lives. In entrepreneurship, I feel there are two sets of stakeholders that I'm responsible for. One is employees, the other is customers, yeah, and especially us when we are handling children. So whatever, and education, yeah, so you are teaching them something which you hope will change their lives, and you hope it will change them for the good. So there's a lot of responsibility that you're doing something which is actually making a difference. If a child is learning at your academy for a year or whatever time they're spending, it has made some transformation. Yeah. And that is a huge responsibility, honestly, that you're actually making a difference. The second is just the people that you hire as a founder, that you are responsible for their livelihoods. Yeah. There are people who have families, there are women who are pregnant, there are men who are going to have kids, or like, an ailing parent. So you are responsible for their livelihood. You have to run the business while it's growing in a responsible manner, that you can continue to keep all the people that you've hired, you can live up to their expectations. They have a lot of trust when they come to an early stage startup. Yeah, they also want something great out of their careers. So that kind of responsibility, I think, is not there when you're working for a company. So that's a huge difference, and that's an emotional burden that you're carrying every day, apart from all the work that you're doing.
The difference in responsibility is insane, yeah, because everything's on you. And you mentioned that Harvard Business School, the way you learned and everything really inspired you. How much did it prepare you in terms of for starting your own business, in terms of the content and the knowledge?
Mhm, mhm. I think so, because I also worked with their entrepreneurship cell that they have, in terms of like a quick experience of what, like, the professors who have helped other founders. We have a professor who helps us, who is part of the early steps in terms of guidance as an advisor, who's been super helpful. It's like literally a phone message away. I feel like I'm sometimes busier, which I feel very guilty about. But these, like, they are really approachable people who are there. Also, just the 2 year experience of meeting so many people from different walks of life. Yeah, like people who had already built their businesses, who came to do their MBA program. People who had built businesses and failed, and there was so much to learn from why they failed. Or like people who are on parallel journeys. Yeah, there are my classmates who also joined consulting after MBA, then they're building their businesses. So having like a peer group, which is one, extremely sharp, two, ambitious, and three, they're going through similar parallel journeys, is a huge help. Now, more tangibly, also, like at early steps, we use the case study method applied to children. So my own experiences. So I've also written a case study back at Harvard to understand, like, what it takes, the psychological sort of impact of the case study method on me, where I really enjoyed all the cases. I still have all the prints. Like, I got a huge suitcase of case studies with me wherever I travel, from US, India, Europe, because I really feel that has a lot of value, and that I don't think I would have been able to create this kind of wonderful curriculum for children if I had not experienced that myself. So definitely, like, if I have to go back in time, I would have the exact same journey, two early steps, what I've had.
And last question, I like to ask this to everyone. I'm curious, what's the best piece of advice you've been given, or like, is there any principle, advice, quote, anything that you really follow or is really important to you?
In terms of life, entrepreneurship, anything.
Anything, yeah.
Um, so I think we touched upon it briefly, and that's like the most important piece for any, like, life and entrepreneurship, is to keep your emotions at check. Be it on your personal side, like if a breakup cannot throw you off completely because there's a lot of life ahead of you. A great marriage cannot keep you on high always, because there'll be bad days. Similarly, at work, yeah, you have, whether it's a great day, of course, take a moment to celebrate the small things, big things, but come back to reality. And if it's a bad day, also come back to reality, which is not always that bad. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's the holds completely true for entrepreneurship, as being able to maintain emotions, because it is an emotional roller coaster. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. It's amazing to get the opportunity to hear more about what you've been doing, about your life and what you've been doing at Early Steps Academy. I think it's amazing that people like yourself are trying to really change learning and make it and build a business doing it. Yeah, it's great for society, great for humanity. And in my opinion, education is pretty terrible right now. So it's always amazing to see people like yourself changing it. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story and experiences.
Thank you, Alice. Thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure. Like, it was a good conversation. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.